The Worst of the Best by Luke Was Not Here 3. Fists were always too fast to dodge growing up. Granted, though they always threw the first punch, I was always the first to say something. I had this horrible habit of treating people who were bigger and stronger than me like they weren't. That wouldn't have been such an issue if I wasn't 5 feet tall. They thought I was self-absorbed and conceited. To their credit, they were absolutely correct. Which meant that if I made a sly comment, which was another of my unfortunate suicidal habits, I'd get beat up. I'd always try running away, but if someone is bigger and stronger than you, they can also outrun you. For the first decade of my life, I could barely fight, was always last in races, never got picked for sparring, and never ever won a fair fight. Which would surprise all of you, I hazard to guess, because I'm also human, as in human. Growing up, I never knew why. Honestly, I didn't think about aliens much. I spent most of my time trying to find a way to be less helpless. Then, a bit later, I moved here, to the planet my parents fought for, with the rebels to overthrow the evil queen. And on my first day, I got into a fistfight with a Caelum. Yay! I was out to go to a bar, not to drink, but just to say, "Hey, I've gone to an alien bar." Talk about a noble motivation. It was also the bar above which I was going to move into an apartment on the 2nd floor. While I was too busy talking to someone, I bumped into the girl next to me, and her glass hit the floor. "Oh, I'm sorry. That was completely my fault. I'll buy you another drink," I turned around. Most of the time, the phrase, "that was completely my fault," has this wonderful effect of making people not want to hit you. I looked and saw it was a Caelum whose drink I'd spilled. My eyes went wide. "I am so sorry. I will buy you rounds for the rest of the night." On me. "Honest to God, I had no idea," I said, bowing profusely. She was about 6 feet-ish, so pretty average. She had short black hair and the same sharp features as an axe, with powerful arms and shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. She grabbed me by my sweater collar and flung me toward the bar. Then she lifted me with an ease that made me feel incredibly emasculated. Or in other words, a typical Tuesday. Now, past Theseus would have immediately made a comment about her intelligence. Present day, smart Theseus does not do that because he likes his teeth. "You want to go?" she said, somehow gritting her teeth as she spoke. No, you are much bigger and stronger than me, and I understand that without question. And if I were to fight you, I would pee my pants long before you threw a punch," I said quickly, still trying to enunciate while waving my hands in a surrendering fashion. "Now, Theseus," I hear you cry, "if you act like a total coward to people, won't they just continue to mess with you in the future?" Well, yes, gentle reader, but that line isn't for people in your neighborhood or whatnot. It's for strangers you'll never see again. Now back to me, airborne. She stared at me with those Salem eyes, the human inverse. White pupils that burned like an eclipse, with the rest all black. I felt a tingle down my spine that looped back to everywhere else. She dropped me. I landed with a small thud and started to breathe again. An awkward silence clung to the air like a child on their parent's leg. "You just gonna let him get away with that?" a voice croaked from somewhere in the bar. She turned around, fire in her eyes. "Oh, my sweet Judas," I muttered, distracting her for a millisecond or two. I was never good at dodging punches, so much so that my fighting stance was basically just having my hands all the way up to my eyebrows, like a knight looking through his helmet's slits. Even when I tried to slip punches, I'd get hit anyway. She started her first punch, and I saw it. I didn't just see it. It was truly an awful punch. Even mine were better. It was so horribly telegraphed. Her arm was so far back, I'd have enough time to go on vacation before it hit me. Easily, I dodged. I'm going to write that again in italics for dramatic effect. Easily, I dodged. Never, in my 18 years of life, had those words, in that order, ever occurred to me. She threw another awful hook, and again I ducked underneath. She tried to jab me in the face, but I slipped the punch. She threw a cross, and I slipped again. It was so slow compared to my past bullies, and even friendly sparring sessions with friends. As I dodged, I thought about all the tricks I'd learned as a kid. I taught myself to fight southpaw, even though I was right-handed, because it was less common, giving me a slight advantage. I kept a high guard because I knew my head movement was bad. and I trained myself in countless ways to stop flinching when punches and kicks came at me. She punched air for 30 seconds. Then I heard that familiar sound, the horrible gasp that one gets during a fight. The more you try to hide it, the louder it grows. It was coming from her, and I started to laugh, which was quite rude of me, I'll admit. But only 30 seconds. Even I could last a minute, throwing non-stop punches and kicks to kill. My best friend can go 2 minutes with no rest, punching and kicking the whole time. She stopped punching and tucked into her guard. I rushed toward her and feinted high toward her head. She raised her hands higher, leaving her body wide open. I threw across to her body, aiming for her solar plexus. She grunted. She wasn't even tensing her core, even though I was in range. I followed up with an uppercut to her chin, which I could only reach because she was curled downward from my cross. I went for another punch, but before I could, she hurled toward the ground. I caught her head before it hit the floor. "That's it!" I yelled, as the back of her head rested in my palm. I placed her down gently and made sure she was still breathing and whatnot. "I guess those stories about humans aren't exaggerated," a deep voice rumbled from the crowd. "I'll say," another squeaked. "Maybe, what are you guys talking about?" I asked, barely stopping myself before I could blurt out the truth. The bartender coughed. I glanced over and saw a framed photo of the woman I'd just fought, surrounded by dozens of medals. I translated the bronze plaque below the picture. International boxing champion. Then her name, which I think I'll leave out of this story. "Seriously?" I stared. "Yeah, you're human?" the bartender asked, looking even more confused. I stopped to think about the implications. Oh dear God, think of the implications. I scratched my head. I guess I'm the shortest giant. The end. Like and subscribe for more content.